Hi, I'm Dr. Nancy Crupi. I'm a biologist with 15 years of academic research experience internationally, and I've been working on a lot of different things, and ultimately I have also had to overcome a lot of personal challenges. I'm here to guide you towards awakening and ego death. Ego death and trauma healing are the most important tasks we need to accomplish today for humanity. The second season of the New Earth podcast is going to be specifically focused on giving you stories so that you see the trails and what kind of breadcrumbs you need to follow for you to reach your own ego death, for you to reach your own trauma healing, and for you to embody your highest self finally. Let's start. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to a new episode of the New Earth podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the persecution of the healer. And I want to be clear about the fact that I'm not talking about specific kinds of people. I'm talking about the healer in the sense of the healing light that we all have inside of us, the healing that spreads in the world, the light of innocence, the light of God, the light of the divine light of healing that spreads, and the divine consciousness that increases in society. All of that is what the healing portion of our universe is, the healing portion of our divine self is. And so I feel like I want to talk about this today, and this episode is gonna be put online, shared online tomorrow. So it's going to be Sunday the 12th. And the reason why I am doing this now is because we are really at a crucial time in our history, and all the things that are happening in the world, the wars and what just happened in Los Angeles, all the fires that spread and that are very, very strangely, spreading everywhere, and especially in places where healers reside and healing communities. We're trying to heal as many people as possible and to awaken as many people as possible. This is really the sign that we are at a crucial time in our history and at a crucial time in the healing process of the world. And before healing really spreads and before peace spreads, there's always a last bit of wars and suffering. And really, like, the thing is that the universe works in a way that it transmutes energy, right? All the energy that we are, all the pain, all the suffering, all the trauma that spreads ultimately pushes us and triggers us, both individually and as community and as a universe, to become more bright, to become more light, to become more healing, to heal, right? And so every time we start our healing journey, there's always a peak of pain, and this is true for all of us. Like, all the stories that I'm sharing in this podcast are ultimately show everybody how the healing journey really always goes in waves, right? And people go up and down and back and forth in their healing journey, and they always reach a point of no return, a point of peak of pain, peak of suffering that makes them awaken and makes them realize that they need to change something, that they need to heal. And that's the breaking point that we are reaching as a society as well, because this is just society in the world is just a reflection of what happens in our minds. It's just a reflection. And so if in the world there are a lot of people who are unconscious, then the world is going to be unconscious. If there are a lot of people who are conscious, then the world is going to be conscious. But obviously, as much as our ego fights against us in our own mind in order to stay there, to keep us in our egoic mind, in our suffering, in our pain, same thing happens in society. And so all the people who are led by their ego try to oppress and suppress the healing of others and in others. And so this is happening all over the world. Like, all the wars and all the things that we're seeing are not just random things that happen, are things that are being triggered and planned on and created and caused by people, by real people that exist and that have acquired power as much as our egoic mind has acquired power over us. So this is just a reflection of how our brain works and how the spiritual world works. So I want to just give you a vision of how I perceive the universe to be, like what is the divine universe, what is the universe, what are the laws of the universe, and all of these things. And ultimately you will see that it's completely reflected in how we function as well. And so I always describe the brain in a very simplistic way, but that is very much true. It's just that most people, scientifically speaking, they describe the brain, they tend to focus, scientists tend to focus on details and on the tiniest detail, and then on molecules, and then on the DNA, and then on, on the bonds between molecules. But ultimately, scientists tend to not have this bigger picture that comes only when you join the divine realm, when you join the divine vision of the universe. And so that's why religion, in the sense of worshiping something, believing into something, having faith in the divine that we are, being holy and treating everything as if it is holy, it's important, because we are ultimately part of a divine realm that we don't perceive until we tap into that specific frequency, into that specific dimension. And so as much as our brain is made of this innermost part, which is the reptilian brain and the limbic brain that process that and that has memories and strategizes, and then we have the surrounding portion, which is the cortical brain, that is really an antenna for consciousness and allows us to tap into the most self-aware part of us, the part of us that shows us how we are really, always strategizing for nothing, because we are really eternal, and so we're just trapped into this egoic reality, into this mundane reality in which we have to constantly escape from death, escape from fear, escape from guilt, escape from shame. And so to do that, we strategize constantly and we live in time. And so the ego really lives in that, in the innermost part of the brain, and it truly, literally tries to constantly oppress and suppress our capability of being conscious. And in fact, from a neurobiological standpoint, our egoic mind is really a sort of gravitational attraction to it through the compulsive brain that almost is like the orbit of the planet around our solar system. Is really something that has this gravitational attraction towards the center of it to keep us stuck there. Because if you are not stuck there and you're present and you see the rest and you finally become conscious, all these things that you're doing as part of your egoic mind stop existing. You stop doing all of those things because you realize that you are just fighting against your brothers, against your sisters, against people around you, just because you forgot that we were all part of the same thing, that we're all ultimately all part of the same journey that the universe is making in waves towards light, towards awakening, towards healing. And so we forgot about that. But reality is that this happens because the universe is not healed yet. So the universe itself is still expanding as a response to the trauma of the Big Bang. And so the trauma is still traveling. And so as much as it travels and it awakens us, because it gives us so much pain that we awaken, in the same way society is working similarly like that. And so people who are very unconscious are causing this constant gravitational attraction towards their corporations, their behaviors, their things, their products. And so as a society, we are being constantly pulled down by this gravitational attraction that these people create through their own ego that has become a collective ego that ultimately creates this gravitational attraction towards all the things that are part of it, such as all the habits that we have acquired as part of this society that doesn't make any sense, like drinking alcohol and going to clubs and getting drunk and vomiting and then doing things that don't make any sense, and then watch movies that really keep us stuck in this codependent and Stockholm syndrome kind of way of living. And then, in the drama and all the drama in our relationships and abusive relationships and manipulations. And then to keep us stuck in that reality, this collectiveness of the ego, people who really have this ego ingrained in themselves that they cannot awaken from because they are not ready to do that. Then they create all of these things to keep us stuck together with them, such as all the habits, all the movies, all the content that we consume every day, all the foods that we consume and that keep us in this egoic reality and that feed our egoic mind as well. From a neurobiological standpoint, all these things really feed, literally like food and frequencies, feed our egoic mind and keep us in this loop, thanks to alcohol and to substances and to things that ultimately trigger that part of the brain and keep us stuck there. And so the world is awakening. We are going already towards stopping to do all of these things. We're already going towards that. But obviously, when you go out of your egoic mind, what happens is that as much as in the body, if you don't use it, you lose it. In society, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so ultimately, as much as the ego is contained in specific cells of our brain that are fighting for their own survival, because if we don't use them, those cells, they're gonna die. They're gonna die and give space and be recycled to feed our conscious part of the brain instead, and to allow new cells to be created there, and our brain to regenerate and to reactivate and to grow in parts of the brain that are more at peace and more capable of creating a peaceful world. In society, it's the same. We have a lot of people who have grown a lot, as much as our egoic mind has grown a lot neurobiologically speaking and neuroanatomically speaking. That part of the brain has grown a lot. Our amygdala, when we are under stress and we are in our egoic state, is very hypertrophic. And so in the same way, in society, we have all of this overgrowth, hypertrophic state of corporations that are toxic for us, that are led by people who are egoic, who are really just trying to, they forgot of being part of everybody else, being brothers and sisters with everybody else. They forgot, and they're really trying to oppress us, but they don't realize that. And so as much as an animal who is fearful can be very dangerous to you, because if an animal is fearful, it perceives everything as a threat to its own survival. So in the same way, all of these people have become dangerous to humanity, because they're really trying to kill everybody who is not them. Because why not, right? Like, if you have to survive, and if you believe that you're against everybody else and everything else is a threat, then you have to kill them, especially the light, people who carry the light in the world, such as the healers, and the portion of our brain, the cortical brain, that is the healed part of us. And so all of these people, what they're really doing with all of their corporations and products and things that they sell to us and that force us to watch, such as through TVs and mass media, who are constantly portraying wars and suffering all the time. What they're really trying to do is to keep alive the part of our brain, and their corporations, they're part of that part of the egoic brain of society. That is really about the ego. Is about keeping the ego alive. Is about keeping their things alive that have nothing to do with love and with healing, but are instead focused on suffering and compulsive behaviors, and all the things that are somewhat painful in the world. And so this is happening at all levels. And obviously, if you try, whomever has gone through their ego death or different kinds of healing journeys knows that before healing, before finally allowing the conscious part of your brain to take over, initially you have a lot of pain, because that's what allows you to become aware of your ego, to become aware that there's something wrong, to become aware that there is something in society that is intentionally trying to keep us stuck. And so the reason why I'm doing this episode today is because what is happening in Los Angeles and what has been happening all over the world in the past, I would say, 100 years, like in the past a long time, but it happens in waves. And so what is happening now in the past few years, I guess, in society, is that we are having a new peak of ego, a new peak of pain, a new peak of suffering. Because first of all, because as much as it goes in waves, like initially the wave raises and then it goes down, then a new wave, a wave of healing grows, and then that triggers the fear into those who are part of the egoic part of society, who again start to rise again, because they're afraid that they're gonna die. If the world heals, nobody needs them anymore, nobody needs their products anymore, nobody needs their corporations anymore. And as much as we as individuals, when we become aware we become self-aware of our ego, and so we start seeing it as the imposter that it is. In society, it's happening the same. And so the more we become capable of healing, the more we become aware that there's someone specifically in society that is carrying out all of those things, that is causing pain intentionally to everybody else, with the purpose of keeping the population oppressed and unconscious and unaware of them, of the fact that they are doing that. And why? Because they're afraid that if we overcome them and we don't need them anymore, then they're gonna die, right? They're gonna die, and obviously it's their ego that is going to die, not them. It's their egoic morality that is going to die. They just will have to change way of existing in the world and become more part of the healing wave as well. But they don't know that. They just think that they're gonna die because the ego lives in this mundane reality and is not capable of understanding that there is something else. And so what really our universe is made of is this egoic side, that is also represented by our separated world, our divisive world that is made of people, physical things that are separated from each other, and then our mind, they believe of being separate from each other, and then society that is made of cities against one another, and nations against one another, and associations and organizations against one another. So all of this separation at all different kinds of levels, that ultimately starts from our perception of separation in our mind. It's ultimately a way of having an ego. All of these things are egos. Nations are an ego. Patriotism and belonging to a corporation is an ego when people identify with their employer, or belonging to a certain fraternity is an ego because people identify with being part of it. And so by belonging to something that is not the whole, but belonging to something that is separate and is in contraposition with everything else, then all of these people ultimately are acting through their ego. And there are different levels of ego, obviously, in the sense that there is the ego that is at the individual level, and there is the ego that is at the more organization kind of level, and it becomes a collective kind of ego. But if you look at it from a higher perspective, from a higher point, these are all separate beings, even if they're not physical beings, but they're made of all the minds, all the bodies, all the gestures, all the actions that these people make, thinking that they are in contraposition with one another. And so this is the first level of the world, which is the mundane world, and the part of the universe that has forgotten of being the whole. And then the universe itself, from a physical standpoint, imagine this universe as a huge ball that in itself contains all of these things that bubble up and down, that happen and that change form and that transmute into one another dynamically. But ultimately, the identity of the universe doesn't change because it's a closed system. And in a closed system, you can transform things into one another. Someone can become poor and someone else can become rich, and money move. And someone dies and someone else is born. And so all of these things are just transformation of the same matter, of the same energy into different things. But ultimately, in a closed system, the full identity, the final identity of the system doesn't change, because nothing is created and nothing is destroyed. So if you look at the universe from a very high standpoint in which you can see human beings, and I guide this beautiful meditation that I call the We Are One meditation that help people reach that level of consciousness. If you look at the universe from that standpoint, then you're going to realize that it's almost as if there's no good or bad. There's nothing, it's just, all of these separations, all of these things ultimately are just nothing. Nothing is actually happening, because the universe is not changing. It's always the same. As much as in our body, things change, but really we are always the same. Like in our body, cells die every day. Every day we have cells that die and new cells that regenerate and are created. But, ultimately we're always the same. The finality of our body, it's always the same. It looks the same. Obviously we age, but when we age is also because we forget about this and we start stressing out. And so in fact, people who are into meditation and gurus and spiritual gurus tend to age a lot lesser than most people and to look a lot younger than most people, even when they're much older than most people. And so the reason why is because if you stop having this inner fight and having this egoic way of thinking, then your body also stops aging, especially because aging is mostly due to us changing our habits, in the sense that, if you think about how you were when you were young, it's not just about, oh, I was younger, I felt better, I was youthful. It's also that you were doing different things, like you were not under stress. Like the stress that we go through when we start working in our crazy society and we start being abused by corporations and by governments, this kind of stress we're put through obviously makes us age. Like this is like the same thing as, you're not ugly, you're just poor. This is the same thing. You're not old, you're just poor. You're just not capable of overcoming this oppression. And so this oppression is weighing on you to the point of sending your body into oxidative stress. And so oxidative stress is burning you, literally. And so we really get burned constantly. And so we go through this attrition in society, and that burns our bodies. But it is us who don't pose resistance to that. And so if your employer asks you to work, and never dedicate time to healing, what do you think is going to happen? It's just a matter of balance, right? So if you always undergo stress and never get rid of that stress and never balance that stress, obviously the stress is going to win on you, to win over you, and to make you age faster than what you should. And so, it's us who intentionally, in a sense, even if we don't do it intentionally, but it's something that it's a choice. Aging is a choice, in the sense that we can avoid that stress. We can tell our employer, look, if you keep doing this, I'm just gonna die faster. You're killing me. So there is attempted murder, and we should start really saying these things to our employers for real, because that's what they're doing. Like they're forcing people into a constant turnover in which we are being cultivated. The Matrix, the movie is a documentary. That movie is not a dystopian reality. It's a documentary of our capitalistic world works. And so beyond that, that's really when you see the universe, and the universe is like, okay, nothing is good, nothing is bad, everything is happening. That's when, someone will tell you, a spiritual guide will tell you, just surrender, because this is just our body that goes through changes, and our universe that goes through this transformation and transmutation of things into one another. But ultimately everything is going to go well. Our final identity as a universe is not going to change. Our consciousness that we are is not going to change. Everything is always the same. And so that is the level in which, Eastern philosophies especially say there's no good or bad. We just are. Just be present and just be, and stop thinking about the future and stop thinking about the present, the past, and just be in the present, in the here and now. So this is the layer in which we, as a species, in our brain, neurobiologically speaking, we reach the awareness that all of these changes and all of these things that happen in the world ultimately make no sense, and we can just observe through the witness modality, observe and become self-aware and aware, and stop suffering for that, and just understand that this is how the world works. We're born, we grow, we die, and this is how it works. But it's just our body that goes through all of that, right? But then there is another level, which is the level of what the universe ultimately is at its core, which is the level of love, the level of holiness, the level of the divine light, the divine love, the divine being that the universe is. And so that is the level of holiness in which, even if it sounds so contradictory, so follow me here. Even if as a universe, physically speaking, there's no good or bad, because things are just changing and nothing is going to happen to us. Ultimately, the universe has a divine mission, which is to awaken and to heal, and to become more and more bright, more and more light, for light to spread and for the darkness to decrease, slowly but surely. And so once you reach that level of consciousness, you understand that yes, it is true that you need to surrender to the universal laws, because going against the universal laws doesn't make any sense. But ultimately what you want to do is also to surf the wave towards the right direction, because there is a right direction. The universe is not expanding in any direction. The universe is expanding. So what I mean is, the universe is not expanding and contracting at the same time. the universe is expanding. So the fact that the universe is expanding means that there is a directionality to our journey. We are not meant to have a journey towards darkness. We are not meant to have a journey towards trauma. We are not meant to have a journey towards shadow, towards darkness, towards pain. We are meant to have a journey away from pain and towards healing, away from darkness and towards light, away from suffering and pain and towards love and compassion. So there is a directionality that is more desirable than the other directionality. And so this is happening, like, this is not something that I'm saying, this is, you're seeing this, right? You're seeing this in the world, that the world is going towards a specific direction that is ultimately the best direction for everybody, which is the direction of healing. And so yes, it is true that there is no good or bad from a physical standpoint, things just change into one another, but from a divine standpoint, there is a directionality into the actions that you need to take, and you need to take the right decisions. And what are the right decisions? The right decisions are those who allow you to heal yourself and others and the world. And so as much as there is this directionality, there are different points, different frequencies in this spectrum that represent different level of this journey. And as much as this happens to us as individuals in our life, and so we go from being in pain, from being traumatized, to heal from trauma, to awaken and to become holy, in the same way in society, the same is happening on the earth and in society and in the universe as a whole. And so there are people who represent frequencies that are undesirable, that represent things that we need to move away from, that represent cells in our brain and parts of our brain that we need to stop using, so that they start decreasing and transforming into, transmuting into the beautiful consciousness of our cortical part of the brain. And so in the same way in society, there are people who are constantly agents of the darkness, because they're just in that part of the spectrum. And as soon as we are going to start moving, the spectrum is changing, because the spectrum is becoming more and more bright, to the point that everything is going to become again light, and the universe is going to remember that it was just in pain, something like a trauma had just happened, and it was just trying to heal from that trauma. And so that means that there is a fight that we need to fight, which is the fight of trying to spread light on the darkness, so that the darkness shrinks and the light increases and becomes bigger and spreads. And so once you do that, at that point, then peace is going to spread as well. So this is important to understand, because then you're going to understand how in the world there are people who are constantly, persistently and intentionally trying to prevent us from reaching the next level of healing, as much as our ego and their ego is doing the same in our mind, because it's afraid of dying. And ultimately this really comes down to cells and genes that are ingrained in us and that are just trying to survive as much as possible, and are designed to survive. Because if you're here today, if certain genes and certain cells and certain organs are here today, it's because they have survived all the previous challenges in our evolution. And so obviously they're very skilled at surviving, and they're trying to survive also the next step. But the next step is going to be different than what we had before, because every new step is different than what we had before, in a place in which there is a directionality to change, and in which we're meant to go towards light, like, so this spectrum of light, imagine this, the darkest times as the beginning and the brightest times as the end, right? And so if you see things like this, then you'll see how certain things that are more dark, are just simply things we're going to move away from, and obviously things that we need to cleanse away and to shed away. And so all these people in society are just represent, as much as the reptilian part of our brain, represent a part that we don't need to use as much anymore, and that we need to embed into our consciousness. These people represent people who have certain skills and certain capabilities that so far, because the consciousness of humanity was low, because the healing community was weak, and because we did not have a network of healers as much as we didn't have a network of neurons that were fully functional and properly functioning in our conscious brain. They have been able to take over. They've been able to acquire power. They've been able to spread, and now they're afraid that, if we spread, if the healers spread, if we heal, if society creates this network of healers and this capability of healing from trauma, then they're not going to be necessary anymore. And instead, what actually happens is that once you finally have the light healing the world and leading the world, then all of those functions that are part of the universe become embedded into it. And so once the real leaders are going to go to the governments and to the corporations, and once the corporations were more virtuous and sustainable and based on humanely treating their employees, or like all the virtuous companies are going to be leading the market. And this doesn't mean that everything that we have done before will not exist anymore, that we are not going to need iron anymore, that we're not going to need minerals anymore, that we're not going to need beverages anymore, that we're not going to need food anymore. We're going to need the same things that we needed before. Just this time we're going to be able to do them better and with the guidance of people who are more conscious and more capable of leading the world towards peace. And so we simply need to really change the way in which we do things, not to replace functions that we had before. The functions that we need are always the same. We're just going to do them in a different way, in a better way that is going to be better for everybody. But it's difficult to explain those things to the ego, because the ego, by definition, doesn't think that way, doesn't understand that is possible. The ego does not have access to consciousness, does not have access to holiness. The ego only lives at the very low level in the vibration of the earth and of society, and therefore the fact of overcoming that, it cannot possibly understand that we're going towards something better and that the ego is still going to exist, but just is going to be embedded into our consciousness and is going to become a tool of our consciousness. What the ego doesn't understand, and what these people don't understand, is that we're simply going towards a world where they're going to be there too, just things are going to be done better, and their functions are going to be put at the service of the light. And so these people, as much as the ego, people who are very much in their ego, they make a person out of it, they make an identity out of it. And so these are people who in society are people who worship the devil, for example, people who are part of Masonic organizations and fraternities, who believe that their organization has to lead and dominate over everybody else. And so these people can't possibly understand what the next step is going to be. And this is why it's important to support healers, because healers have the key to our futures. And so we really need to support healers. And so what is happening in society right now is not random. We need to understand that we have gone through and we have been put through intentionally a lot of things through history that goes from manipulated media and mass media and news and things that constantly keep us in fear modality on purpose. And we have also been fed junk food, and now even bugs. They're trying to feed us bugs because these are all things that keep us at a very low vibrational level. And we've been forced or taught through movies and through advertisements to use alcohol and to use cocaine and to use things that keep us in our egoic modality. And so now we have become even addicted to all of those things, and we have made an identity by being induced to do that. We have made an identity out of that lifestyle, out of that. And so we've become addicted to our job titles, to the kind of lifestyle we carry, the kind of friends we have, the kind of friends, when you're in your egoic modality, you don't have friends. You just hang out with people that have similar egos, and everybody carries around their ego. And so it's important to understand that, because when there is a directionality and there is a spectrum and you're trying to go towards the opposite side of the spectrum, which is the light, then you need to start discerning between who is going towards that direction and who is trying to pull you down towards the darkness, to pull you down toward the ego. This is important because today we have in a lot of organizations and corporations, even a lot of governments and a lot of people who pretend to being doing our best, and instead behind the scenes in a very covert and Machiavellian ways, and in very through a lot of conspiracies, are really trying to keep us down. And so now, because we are reaching this peak, people don't understand that we are really being oppressed and suppressed in a lot of ways. And if before these people could do that through slavery, now the new form of slavery has become, being forced to work 3 jobs. Isn't that slavery too? If you can't enjoy life, that's slavery. Or any form of, being constantly oppressed through bills, and having to pay insurances that then don't actually give you any services, they don't heal you, or being forced to undergo medical treatments that don't actually heal you, or being convinced through manipulations and through TVs and through movies and through the video games that our kids play, being convinced of a reality that doesn't really exist. That is another form of slavery. It's a slavery made of thoughts. It's a cage that we don't see, and it's the worst kind of cage. And now it's reaching another level, which is that these kind of corporations and organizations are really trying to reach the next level, which is for them to embed humanity into being slaves. And they're trying to do that through, in Europe for example, they're trying to force people to eat bugs. Eating bugs and insects is a way of keeping people and like animals, so being lesser than human. And so nobody should do that, but now they're trying to do it in Europe. They're forcing the population to eat bugs. And this is happening in a lot of different ways. And what is happening in Gaza and what is happening in Ukraine and all of these wars are other ways of keeping us stuck, because if you're afraid that that is happening to you as well, then the egoic mind is gonna be like, okay, maybe I should shut up, because if this happens to me as well, I don't know what to do. And so the problem is that we keep believing, and when things happen to other people, we keep not supporting them, not helping them, pretending we don't know that happened, because we think that the ego thinks that if he stays in a corner and doesn't say anything, if he shuts up, nothing is going to happen to it. And that's not true, because if people trying to oppress the population, they're going to try to oppress the entirety of the population. Thanks to this mechanism, knowing that people are going to just stay in their corner and not talk about what is happening, what is going on, and pretend they haven't seen anything, so that they, by using this mechanism, they oppress people and enslave people one portion after the other, because everybody else thinks it's not me, it's not going to be me. And so that's what discrimination is doing. Discrimination is allowing these people to, one portion at a time, oppress different portions of the population and enslave different portions of the population one after the other. But again, we are awakening, and so a lot of people are awakening. So now, like, talking about races, white people and Native Americans and Indians and people from Asia in general are really awakening a lot, and they're healing a lot. And so and now even the Black community is becoming more and more close to, like, thanks to especially Christianity, and to a lot of spreading of the healing towards them as well. Now also the Black community is finally getting out of the oppression, but it's taking time, and all of these things, if we are not aware of what is happening, we don't facilitate this wave of healing, and instead we tend to go backward, and to allow people to keep oppressing us, because we buy their products, we give them power, we vote them, and we give them political power, So we need to be aware of who is on what side and who we need to support. So now, especially because my podcast is mostly listened in Los Angeles, really it's important to, especially in this moment after the fires and what happened in Palisades and Topanga, which are really communities where healing was spreading and the spiritual community was becoming very strong, and this network of healers was becoming a nucleus of healing that was spreading. Now we have been destroyed again, right? Like, people are being destroyed again. And instead, what is happening right now, and it's beautiful, and we need to keep doing that, we need to keep increasing instead social cohesion as a consequence of what just happened. We need to transmute the energy of this oppression we have received into healing, into community, into networks, into becoming stronger, and into becoming aware of who is doing all of those things. And so it's also important because this is tricky, because during these supposed calamities and supposed climate change caused things, what actually happens is that a lot of corporations start asking for donations. So, but those are the same corporations that oftentimes have caused what has just happened. And so you have to be very careful into donating to the right people. So I suggest you to do not donate to big corporations, and try instead to donate directly to your community, at the level of community, especially to healers. Try to really support the healers, not just the healers in terms of people who have been evacuated. I'm talking about the healers who are trying to heal those who have been evacuated, the healers who are trying to organize communities, because the healers are people in our population that have the intuition to discern between the good and the bad, between who has evil purposes and who is in the light instead. And so donate to healers and ask them to help and support the people who have been evacuated, the people who need healing, who need support, so that we can also provide free services, free group sessions, trauma healing, sound baths, things like that, and clothes and all the things that you want to donate, give them to the healers. Give money to the healers. Give money to organizations that are small. Avoid big corporations. Just really try to donate only to people who you know directly in person, that you know they're actually trying to do good things, and really donate to them as much as possible. This is how we transmute what just happened into strengthening the consciousness of the world, into rising the consciousness of the world, into strengthening the network of healers and the network of healing in our brain as well. Because ultimately what trauma does is destroying our capability of being conscious. Because what trauma does is it keeps us back again into our unconscious part of the brain. And that's why, every once in a while we have a new war, and a reset button, right? The war, so that it causes a generational trauma that then it takes ages to heal. And instead we need to heal immediately. And now people have become more and more resilient, and they can heal immediately. But you need to give immediate help so that they can immediately recover from that trauma and not pass it through the next generations. So it's very important that right now the entirety of LA, and please share these episodes so that people can listen to it. It's very important that the entire population of LA and of the world really starts donating directly to healers. And I suggest to all the healers that are listening to this episode to really start donation campaigns, like fundraising campaigns, to ask for donations in various ways, in in any possible kinds of way that you can. Start asking for donations and donate that money to people who you know are in need, or use that money to offer people who are in need, who are suffering, who have been traumatized. Use that money to give them free healing sessions, free services that you know are going to be useful for them. And I suggest everybody, especially those who have venue, to really facilitate this and to help people, help healers offer these group sessions without charging too much, or without charging. If you can, try to donate your venue to this. So this is an important message today for the LA community, and we need to fight against this. We need to unite, and we need to have a cohesion right now so that we can finally heal each other and stop nurturing and fostering the darkness, because that's what we do if we are not conscious, if we don't know how to discern. But not everybody knows how to discern, and I'm personally, I know a lot of things in society because I have I've gone through a lot of things in my life, and I've met a lot of people who are really trying to destroy the world and to enslave humanity forever. And I've literally met them, and I constantly receive divine messages about this, and I'm really on a divine mission to prevent the darkness from spreading and to spread light. And so I'm doing this with my resources and in all the possible ways that I can, but I constantly receive attacks, because this is exactly the point, that we constantly receive attacks in a lot of different ways. And just some of us, unfortunately, as much as if you go to a black person and they tell you how they've been discriminated, you're like, I don't think discrimination exists. I've never been victim of that, right? And instead, they do go through a lot of discrimination in ways that most white people can't possibly wrap their head around. And so in the same way, a lot of healers, especially the ones with the best healing capability and the best promising potential to heal the world, are constantly attacked, are constantly under oppression, are constantly sabotaged in ways that most of them don't even realize. But there is a capillary attempt to prevent the healing community from healing the world and from spreading light. And so it's important that the population, if even if you don't know about this, if you've never been victim of this, as much as you don't know what discrimination may be like, you have to understand that certain things only happen to certain people in society, because not everybody has the same potential to change the world. Not everybody has the same capability of recognizing the devil. Not everybody has the same life experience, the same skills, the same potential in the world, right? And so things happen to people which have the highest potential to change the world, and so you really need to understand that you need to donate to those people, because those are the people that have the power to change the world, and that can understand who they should give money to, who they should give services to, what they should do, what they should not do. And so the population ultimately, as much as you guys, we support politicians because they know what to do, right? We have no idea. They know what to do. And so in the same way, we need to support healers, because not everybody is a healer. Not everybody knows what to do, but healers do. Healers know what to do. So I suggest you to really focus now on channeling your donations of any kind, which can be clothing, it can be food or money. Channel your donations through the healing community first, and then allow them to spread that money and those donations to the people in need, instead of donating directly to big corporations who you don't actually know what they're doing with that money. So just really try to do that. And I hope I'm organizing an event, and it's gonna be tonight, like today is the 12th. When this episode is gonna be online, it's going to be the 12th of January. And so if you are listening to it right now and it's still December, you're still on time to come to my gathering. It's a small gathering at my place at 6 p.m. in which we're going to be chanting and praying and collecting donations like clothing and food and other kinds of items to be donated to the people in need that have been evacuated. And I want to really give a special thoughts to the healing community in Topanga. Guys, don't give up. Just really try to heal as soon as you can and as much as you can, and to ask for support, because we're here for you. And really try to transmute whatever happened to you into ego death, into a better healing, into reacting in a way that is even stronger than before, to shine light even stronger than before, even better than before. So really try to transmute everything negative that is happening in the world, and all these attempts to force us again into the ego and into trauma, into healing instead. React through healing and ask for help. If you feel like you're going backward and you're again into your PTSD and you are compulsively thinking and not being conscious, ask for help. There are a lot of groups. I'm going to link some of them. There are a lot of groups that you can be part of. I have personal community on WhatsApp in which I share my events and I share prayers, and where people can ask for help. I'm going to create a specific group for support for the fires. And so if you need help, just I'll give you the link. You just subscribe to that link, and you can ask for support. And if anybody can give you support, I'm happy to become a way for you to get support. And I hope this episode is not going to be too long this time, because I think it's really unnecessary in a sense, and I want for everybody to be able to listen to it as soon as possible, so that we can support people immediately. And so the whole purpose of this episode is not just to educate you guys, but to really be the first responder to the emergency that is happening in LA. And so I think this is going to be already enough. It's usually an hour and a half episode. This is enough for today. I'm gonna put some links in the description so that you guys know what kind of resources you can access and who you can contact and where the healers are. And really, please send more people if you know people who have been evacuated, because that's the problem. Like, we don't know who has been evacuated, we don't know who needs help, and so we need to create a community in which really people are invited to join, and they need help so that they can ask for help. And so this needs to have a capillary exposure, in a sense, a capillary action. This needs to happen in a capillary way, in a sense that ultimately it's you who knows people and who can help people. It's people who can help people. So instead of going through corporations that then don't allow you to join forces with your community and to know who is in need, tell your friends directly. I know you've been evacuated, you live there, you used to live in Palisades, you used to live in Topanga, you used to live in all those places that have been evacuated. Do you need help? I can give you the links to some communities, I can give you the names of some healers, there are people who want to support you. So really, let's go one by one, person to person, instead of going through bigger organizations that oftentimes do not do our best and are instead part of this darkness that we're trying to shine light on and we're trying to heal from, and that instead are oftentimes causing calamities to then get money out of us and to oppress us and to keep us into PTSD. So this is fundamental. So let's really try to give exposure to this episode as much as possible so that people know, and I'm going to put all these links. And I really want to make sure that everybody understands that healing is something that is just about our intentions, in a sense. It's like really our intention of healing that makes us make choices in a healing way, and so if your intention is healing, then instead of dwelling into victimism or dwelling into things that are in some way negative and don't allow you to get out of the hole in which you are right now, you don't choose those things. If you want to heal, you choose something else. You choose to use the ropes that are sent to you into that hole. You choose to climb out. You choose to make different choices. You choose to focus on the light, and so it's all about setting the right intentions. So please set your intentions on healing and community healing and social cohesion and reaching a more structured healing community, even more than before, as a consequence of what has just happened, and to transmute that energy into a barrier to the darkness, so that this is not going to happen again, that we are going to be stronger than before, stronger than ever, and that we're going to grow to the point that the consciousness of humanity is going to become so strong that we're going to be able to quench that darkness, to just shine light on it so much that the shadow in that darkness is just going to be a memory. So let's do that together. Let's set our intentions, and I'll see you guys next time. And thank you so much for listening, and I hope everything is going to go well and everybody's going to heal as soon as possible. And I'll see you guys next time.